talaq, and the way to give the talaq according to the Sunnah is that it is given separately over 3 separate months, and that it is not given during the menstrual cycles. That's what it means to give a Sunni talaq or a talaq according to the Sunnah. If it is given 3 talaqs in one go or 2 talaqs in one go without separating them 1 month after the other, then that's considered to be bid'i, i.e. against the Sunnah, i.e. the person giving talaq in this way will be sinful. So we're still understanding what talaq is. Okay, we're categorizing. From the one angle, if you look at the way you give talaq, the impact it has on the marriage contract is called bid'i, is called a raj'i or ba'in. If you look at what time of the month is given, it can be Sunni or bid'i. Third issue, if we look at what kind of words are used, for talaq, then it's also categorized into sarih and kinaya, 2 types. Direct, clear cut, not needing any interpretation, and kinaya, which means indicating, not 100% direct. We need to understand and ask the guy, what did you mean? What's the intention? So this is the third way of looking at talaq, based on what language was used when the talaq was given. We know already, we've said it before, that as for khula and how a woman may seek a separation, that we're coming to that. Anyway, first we're covering the talaq itself, then we'll cover what's called khula or talaq ala al-mal. This is a separate topic, we're coming to it inshallah slowly. So first we define talaq, we spoke about talaq a bit more, then we're now trying to look at talaq in our last lesson based on what impact it has on the marriage contract. Is it raj'i, is it ba'in, baynuna sughra, baynuna kubra? And then based upon the time of the month is called Sunni or bid'i, and based upon the words that are used, it can be either sarih or kinaya. So now if someone was to go and describe a talaq, he may say the following words, that this was a raj'i talaq that was given in the Sunni way, the Sunnah way, and it was given sarih, it was given directly. So these are, so every talaq can be described in these words. So is it this or that? So it could be, so we can say that this man gave a raj'i talaq, and he gave it in the Sunnah way, not the bid'i way, and he gave a sarih talaq, a direct talaq. Okay, and we'll understand more and more inshallah. We'll improve on our understanding and we'll progress in our understanding of what talaq is. Now, when we describe what talaq, raj'i and ba'in is, it gets a bit confusing. So what I've done today is I've got in front of me one of the prime books, a very important book in the Hanafi school of law. It's called the Kitab Bada'i'u as-Sana'i'i fi Tartib al-Shara'i' by Al-Imam Al-Kasani. Solid kitab, amazing book. So he's going to give us the definition of what a raj'i talaq is. Last time we explained what raj'i talaq is. He's going to say it in sort of a definition is something that's jami' and mani'. A definition is something, a sentence or a phrase that describes to us what the issue is, and it basically specifies it for us. So we're going to look at the definition of what a raj'i talaq is. It says an yakuna at-talaqu, that the talaq. So a raj'i talaq is as follows. A raj'i talaq is as follows. What is it? أن يكون الطلاق بعد الدخول حقيقة. That first of all, for a talaq to be raj'i, it has to be after the consummation of marriage. What that means is if someone done their nikah and then never consummated their marriage and then gave talaq, then this can't be raj'i. This will be ba'in only. So first of all, that the talaq is given after a consummation that is a real consummation. غير مقرون بعوض, and the talaq is not given in exchange for something else. Okay, is not غير مقرون بعوض, that it's not being given in exchange. Like for example, he's not getting paid for it, or the wife is not telling him that if you give me talaq, then I'll give you X amount of money. So it's not that, because if it was based on money, then this would also become ba'in and not raj'i. Okay, ولا بعدد الثلاث. Also raj'i means that it's not 3. You can't have raj'i that's 3. You can't return to your marriage after 3. ولا بعدد الثلاث. لا نصا ولا إشارة. So he can't indicate 3 by saying 3 talaqs or even indicating it with his fingers. If you indicate with your finger, then it means the number that you're showing. If someone says, I give you talaq like this number or like this, then that means it's 3. So we're saying talaq, the ta'rif is أن يكون الطلاق بعد الدخول حقيقة. It's after the consummation of the marriage. The raj'i talaq is that talaq which is given after a proper consummation of the marriage, and it is not in exchange of money or anything else, and it is not 3 talaqs, whether verbally or indicatively, and also he does not say that this is a ba'in talaq. If he says talaq, I give you talaq ba'in, then that means ba'in, even if it is just once. Okay, ولا موصوفا بصفة تنبئ على البينونة أو تدل عليها. Okay, and there's a bit more, I don't want to confuse it too much. So a raj'i talaq is that talaq which is being given after the consummation of the marriage, and it has not in exchange of any money or anything else, and it is not 3 talaqs, and it is also not clearly saying that it's ba'in. That's a raj'i talaq. However, the ba'in talaq, which is the opposite, ba'in talaq, we spoke about ba'in last week as well, remember, but we're just clarifying a bit more. A ba'in talaq is أن يكون بحروف الإبانة. So a ba'in talaq will be a ba'in talaq if he says it's a ba'in talaq. If he says that this is a ba'in clear talaq, this is a strong, like if he emphasizes with strong words that I give you I divorce you completely, like that, for example. Alright? So a ba'in talaq will be when he says it's a ba'in talaq, okay, when he says a ba'in talaq, okay, and this is before the consummation of the marriage. أن يكون بحروف الإبانة أو بحروف الطلاق أو بحروف الطلاق لكن قبل الدخول الحقيقي. So remember, before we said raj'i is that talaq which is given after the consummation. If it is given before the consummation, then this is ba'in. Or if it is given after the consummation, but if it's given in exchange of something. So for example, the wife says, I'll give you money, give me talaq. Or I want khula', okay, I'll return to your mahar, so give me talaq. This is also going to be ba'in. Okay? Or that he says it, for example, he says it's 3 talaqs. Or he indicates that it's 3 talaqs. Okay, so let me read that again in Arabic. In Arabic it says, وَأَمَّا الصَّرِيحُ الْبَائِنُ فَبِخِلَافِهِ وَهُوَ أن يكون بحروف الإبانة أو بحروف الطلاق لكن قبل الدخول حقيقة. That the divorce is before the consummation of the marriage. That's ba'in. Or that he said he gave 3 talaqs in verbally or indicatively. Or he described it as ba'in. He said, I give you a ba'in talaq. Okay? And so on. And so on, yeah, and there's a bit more there. I thought I'd just read out to you that ta'rif. But why is it important to understand? Why is it important to understand what's a talaq raj'i and what's a talaq ba'in? Because the impact and the effect of raj'i and ba'in is different. Depending on what kind of talaq has been given, okay, different consequences occur. Depending on what kind of talaq, raj'i or ba'in is given, different consequences occur. What are they? So for example, the rules of raj'i talaq is that they can return to marriage just by saying, okay, let's carry on. They don't need to give a new mahar or a new contract. This is raj'i talaq. But in ba'in you can't do that. If it's a ba'in talaq, then you have to do a new contract. Number 1. Okay? That if it's a raj'i talaq, then there's still opportunity to give more talaqs. But ba'in talaq usually that usually ends the marriage. That usually ends the marriage. Okay. Furthermore, if someone gives a raj'i talaq, a revocable, a reversible talaq, okay, a raj'i talaq, then suppose now, this is like, I don't know if you guys don't understand this, but suppose now the man gave his wife a dowry, a mahar, and the mahar was, say for example, he said £10,000. But he only gave 5, and he said, I'll give the rest of you later. It's fine, that's jaiz, the nikah is valid. But when he gives the talaq, ba'in. If it's a proper if it's a proper final talaq, if it's a ba'in talaq, then he has to give the rest of it right now, because when are you going to give it then? But if it's a raj'i talaq, then because there's still a chance of them carrying on in marriage, then he doesn't have to give it immediately right now. We'll see what happens. If they do ruju', then they do ruju'. If they don't do ruju', then obviously it becomes ba'in afterwards, it becomes clear, and therefore at that time when it becomes ba'in, he'll have to give the remaining amount of the mahar that he owes his wife. Okay? Another issue is that if it's a raj'i talaq, then the marriage is technically still connected. Marriage is technically still connected. And so at that time, if any of them die, any of the two spouses die, they will inherit from one another. But if it was ba'in talaq, a clear talaq, and basically the ba'in talaq, if it was a ba'in talaq, then they would not inherit from one another. But if it's raj'i, they would inherit from one another because they're still connected. Also, furthermore, that if it's a raj'i talaq, then the man still has to spend on his wife. He still has to provide for her clothes and food and drink and etc. Okay, so there are that's why it's important to understand what kind of talaq has occurred. Is it raj'i or is it ba'in? How do you understand? Based on the definition we've given. But ideally, to be honest, we wouldn't go around applying or giving fatwa on what kind of talaq it is just by listening to this course. You'd go to a local mufti. Because a lot of the times you listen to this stuff, it doesn't really make sense. Do you get it? It's complicated, it's confusing. So you should go to someone who's a specialist and they will say, okay, yes, it's raj'i. But even better than that, don't give talaq. Sort it out. Deal with it. Even better than that. Okay, so we've understood that talaq, based on the effect that it has on the contract, how much it damages the contract of marriage, how much it damages and breaks the nikah. It could be raj'i, ba'in baynuna sughra, or ba'in baynuna kubra. Ba'in, or could just say raj'i and ba'in for now, okay, just to make it simple. If you look at the time of the month it was issued, then talaq, it could be sunni, according to the sunnah, i.e., if one is to give talaq, then he should give it in that way, or bid'i, i.e., against the sunnah. If you look at the words that he used, then it could be sarih, direct, or it could be kinaya. So today, inshallah, we'll talk a bit more about what do you mean by sarih and what do you mean by kinaya. Okay. So صيغة الطلاق هي اللفظ المعبر به عنه إلا أنه في بعض الأحوال يترك اللفظ ويستعاض بغيره أو يستعان بغيره أو يستعاض بغيره عنه كالكتابة والإشارة. So when I say to you, if someone asks you how was the talaq given, we're trying to find out exactly what words were used. Was it words or was it written? Okay. If the talaq was given directly and clearly, like I give you talaq, then that's called sarih. Okay, that's called sarih. However, if it is said, or if the guy says, for example, I don't want you anymore. I don't want you anymore. What does he mean by that? Well, that's called kinaya. Do you get it? If he says, go back to your mom's house. Go back to your mom's house. What does he mean by that? Does he mean kinaya? Does he mean talaq? Or is he just saying, go and have a holiday and see you in a few weeks and I'll make sure the house is ready and clean. What does he mean? We need to understand. So if it is directly and clearly the words of talaq and separation, then this is considered to be sarih and direct. Okay. However, if he indicates it, but doesn't say it clearly, then this is called kinaya. What if someone in their mind thinks, I divorced this woman, right? Then does that divorce occur? It doesn't. Okay, and that's because the Prophet ﷺ says, إن الله تعالى تجاوز لأمتي عما حدثت به نفسها ما لم تتكلم به أو تعمل. In which the Prophet ﷺ, is a hadith narrated by An-Nasa'i and Tirmidhi and is Sahih hadith, that Allah has forgiven and overlooked for His ummah things that they speak about within their own minds. And as long as they don't speak about it, that they just ponder over it, contemplate it, as long as they don't speak it or they don't action it. Okay? So that's why even if it's a sin, if someone is thinking about it and doesn't actually do it, then that's not considered to be a sin. So similarly here as well, that if someone is just contemplating over it but doesn't actually pronounce the divorce or talaq, then it's not considered to be talaq. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I want to go to a very, very, very interesting topic. Okay, before we end today, inshallah, I won't make it too long as well. What's the very interesting topic? There is a very interesting topic that always comes up. What if someone gives 3 talaqs to their wife in one go? In one go, or in one word. For example, he says to his wife, I give you 3 talaqs. Did you get it? Then is that how many talaqs does occur? 1 or 3? It sounds like it should be 3, right? Because it's 3 talaqs. But is it that? Well, you'll see, we'll find out. So this is something that where the fuqaha and the jurists have differed. What is that? What's the mahal niza'? What is the issue that they are debating over? If someone says to their wife, I give you 3 talaqs, but in one word, in one sentence, they haven't actually said, I give you 1 talaq, 2 talaq, 3 talaq. They said, I've given you 3 talaqs. Then does this mean that actually 3 talaqs are issued, or is it just 1 because he said it in one phrase? This is an issue. So let's understand. أنت طالق ثلاثا, I give you 3 talaq, or you've been divorced 3 times, but he said in one word. So what is it? There are 3 opinions on this issue. What's the first opinion? Al-madhhab al-awwal. The first opinion and the first madhhab on this is Jamhur al-Fuqaha. The majority and the large body and the mass majority of the jurists and the scholars. Who are they? They are the 4 schools of thought. So the Hanafiyya and the Shafi'iyya and the Malikiyya and the Hanabila. Okay? And a lot of Sahaba, okay, they said that if someone says, I give you 3 talaqs, even if it's in one word, then it's actually occurring 3 times. Okay? And he does naql of a qawl of Ibn Qudama. Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi is a Hanbali scholar, big Hanbali scholar. In his Mughni, he says that لأن اللفظ الصريح, that he basically says in Arabic, لأن اللفظ الصريح في الثلاث والنية لا لأن okay, sorry, what is it? Okay. ولو قال أنت طالق 3 فهي 3 وإن نوى واحدة لا نعلم فيه خلافا لأن وإن نوى واحدة لا نعلم فيه خلافا. He's saying that if someone says to his wife, I give you 3 talaqs, and there is 3, and we don't know anyone that's opposing us, we this is the only opinion, this is the correct opinion. And he says, explain, because لأن اللفظ صريح, that if he says 3 clearly, then he said 3. We don't need to know about his intention. We only need to know about intentions when it's not clear. Remember we said if we don't know from the clear words what he meant, in kinaya, we said a kinaya, a talaq is that one which is not clear. So we need to find out what his intention is. But if he's said it very clearly, I've given you 3 talaqs and that's it, there's no need to go around asking for intention. Or intention doesn't have an effect because he said it clearly. وَلِأَنَّ النِّيَّةَ إِنَّمَا and he's basically just saying that because there's no need for niyyah here. We don't need to know what his intention was. The second opinion is the opinion of the Ahlul Zahir, the Zahiriyya, and some of the Sahaba, and Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and his student Ibn Qayyim, رضي الله عنهم, رحمة الله عليهم جميعا, that they said if someone gives talaq 3 times in one word, then it only occurs once. Okay? And there's a third opinion, and they're the Shia al-Imamiyya, Imamiyya Shia, the 12ers, okay, they say that giving 3 talaqs in one word has no effect at all. It's not even one. So that's that. So there's a reason why there's the ikhtilaf. So what's the evidences? Let's look at some evidences. What the Jumhur of the Fuqaha who said that giving 3 talaqs in one word actually means 3, right? Why did they say it's 3? What's their evidence? Okay. First of all, because Allah says in the Quran, الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان. Allah is giving, when He talks in the Quran about talaq, okay, He does not differentiate between giving 3 in one go or 3 separately, or what you meant when the word is clear. He didn't differentiate between giving the 3 talaqs in one word or giving the 3 talaqs in 3 separate words. So therefore, talaq is that. When you give it with 3 separate words and give it 3 in one word, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. That's the first evidence. Second is that the Prophet ﷺ, someone came to him and he complained. وقال ابن عباس رضي الله عنه وأرضاه narrates that someone came to the Prophet ﷺ sorry. Ibn Abbas said to a man, okay, who came to him and said, I gave my wife 100 talaqs. 100 talaqs. He said, well, as for the 3, then that's occurred and you have a right to give 2 talaqs because obviously that's all you own. You don't own more than 3 talaqs. But as for the 97, the 97, okay, then in that case you're basically just making a mockery of Allah's signs. You're not taking it seriously. You're basically, who are you to give more than 3 talaqs? You don't have, but the point being is, even though he gave his wife 100 talaqs, he only counted 3, meaning all 3 of them occurred. Another one is, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam qala, another incident that a man gave his wife 1,000 talaqs, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him that you only own 3, you don't have more than that, so the rest of them, what is it, 997, you don't have no rights over that. That's all dhulm and it's oppression. The point being is, what's the wajhul istidlal? So we've seen the dalil. This is something that I always talk about, which is, there's a dalil is the hadith, dalil is the Quranic ayah, but then how are we taking the evidence? How are we understanding the evidence? Ma wajhul istidlal? How is this dalil being used? How does it make sense to us in this mas'ala? Why is this dalil being used in this mas'ala? It's being used in this mas'ala because it's telling us that the Prophet ﷺ, even though he gave the talaq, even though the man gave the talaqs 1,000 in one go, he counted them as individuals. He said 3 is for you, but the rest of them are not. So he counted them as individuals. And so there are also other evidences here. And he says the Salaf and Khalaf also have practiced this, and he says there's ijma' on it or something, or ijma' on it that there is, but saying ijma' maybe it would be a bit problematic if there were some Sahaba saying otherwise. And he's also saying that if the Sharia has given the person, the husband, the right to give 3 talaqs, and he issues them separately or he issues them together, that's his decision. It doesn't matter if he's giving it separately or together, it's still 3 talaqs. He's made it very specific, and the Quranic ayat hasn't made a differentiation between giving in one word or giving it separately. It's still talaq. So this is what the Jumhur of the Fuqaha are saying, that even if you give 3 talaqs in one go, in one phrase, then that's still considered to be 3 talaqs. The second madhab, the madhab of the Ahlul Zahir and the madhab of the Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi and Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahumullah, is that it's only occurring only once. And what is that? Why are they saying that? Well, they're saying, well, the Quran says that, you should, the Quran is giving at-talaq marratan. It says فَإِن طَلَّقْهَا فَلَا. In the Quranic ayat we find that the Quran is encouraging us to give the talaq separately. So that's the first point. And the refutation for that, their evidence is going to be that these are all encouragements. These don't mean that talaq giving it otherwise doesn't apply. We'll come to that in a moment anyway. But the second madhab is saying that the reason why 3 talaqs in one go occur as one is because the Quran is telling us to give them separately. That's number one. What's number two? Number two, that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu arda says that at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and at the time of Abu Bakr, and the 2 years in the Khilafah of Umar, that giving talaq, 3 talaqs in one go was actually only 1. But then from the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he made giving 3 talaqs in one word as 3. So he made a change. That's what they're trying to say. That before it was that, but after it changed. But the answer for that also would be that if Umar radiallahu anhu made that decision and all of the Sahaba accepted it, then this is called ijma' sukuti. It's also a form of ijma'. When they consent to it. We must say they were scared probably to say to Umar radiallahu anhu, or like counter and argue back. But this is not true. The Sahaba were not like that. Because even the old woman had the courage to say to Umar, what's going on? Why are you wearing different types of clothes and etc. He was saying that wasn't the issue. The issue that the woman pulled him up on was the mahar. When Umar radiallahu anhu was trying to make the mahar fixed, and she said, Allah has allowed for us to receive lots of mahar, so why are you trying to restrict it? So the point being is that Umar, even though he had, he was fierce and he was quite scary, but if he wasn't stubborn, nor was he arrogant. If he was corrected for the sake of Allah, he would listen, and he would submit to the Quran and the Sunnah if he was told about it, or if someone objected to it based on the Quran and Sunnah. Okay. And then there is also another evidence in which he says that there is a Sahabi called Rukana, طلق امرأته, that he gave talaq to his wife 3 talaqs في مجلس واحد فحزن عليه حزنا شديدا, and he was very very upset that he gave 3 talaqs in one sitting. كيف طلقتها, فسأل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كيف طلقتها فقال 3, and so he asked the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم about it, and the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم asked him, how did you give talaq? He said, I gave 3 في مجلس واحد فقال إنما تلك واحدا, that this was only just one. وقد ناقش الجمهور, and the Jumhur came back and gave back answers to these evidences that they brought forward. And so when the writer is writing in this way, that he brings the opinion of the Jumhur, gives the dalil for it, then brings the opinion of the second, and brings the dalil for it, then he's also arguing and countering the opinion of the second group. That means basically you can tell where he's going with this. You can tell that where he stands, and he'll say it clearly anyway. That he's saying that as for the ayat that you've used, these are just talking about directions and indications and encouragement that you should give the talaq separately. And just like the Quranic ayah is also encouraging the Sunnah, a way of giving talaq, which is to give it during the Sunni time, which is not in the period, and not to give them together. But nonetheless, we all agree that if someone was to give the talaq during the menstrual cycle or give them all together, okay, this should still be applicable. This should still be applicable, as in together, i.e. within one tuhur, within 1 month. Okay, so they're saying that these are just indicative ayat, i.e. they're encouraging us, they're teaching us manners and the right way to do things, but it doesn't mean that if someone does it wrong, it will not be actually the talaq itself. Okay, okay, and he gives a few other responses here, but I don't want to make it too long. The point being is, okay, so as for the hadith that they brought of Rukana, there's a word of al-batta that's being used, and there's an ikhtilaf between them, but in the end he says that the stronger opinion is that of the Jumhur, the 4 A'imma, and that giving 3 talaqs in one word would be considered to be 3 talaqs. But then he also confesses that amma ra'i thani, even though it is not the stronger opinion, nonetheless it's practiced within the fatwa. It's practiced in fatwa. So if someone comes and for a fatwa in Egypt, then they will say, how many talaqs did he give them? She might say, well, he gave me 3 talaqs in one go. Then they'll say, just count it as 1. Because they want to make people's lives easy, and they don't want to destroy a family. And if you have a divorce, then how is the woman supposed to for example, how is the man supposed, all of that, all of the complications, and the children, what happens to them. So because there is, even though it's according to them is the weaker opinion, even though it is the weaker opinion, but to make people's lives easy, it's still an opinion, and so they accept that opinion. Does that make sense? So that's practiced in fatwa. So that's that. So we've spoken about a few things today. And I'd rather keep the lesson short and simple so that you can understand and contemplate. And we spoke about what it is, what talaq raj'i actually means, the definition, what talaq ba'in actually means. Okay, now what are the differences between talaq raj'i and ba'in? We spoke about that. We also spoke about the issue of what kind of language is used in the talaq. It can be divided into 2 categories: sarih, direct, or indirect kinaya. Sarih is that which it's clear from the words, like for example, you're divorced. Okay, then in that case there's no need for intention. The intention doesn't have an impact. However, if the words are not direct and not clear, then here the intention is required to understand. So we'd have to ask the person, what did you mean? So when it's direct and clear, it's called sarih. When it's indirect, it's called kinaya. Okay, and also we spoke about talaq that's given 3 times in one word. We've understood that the Jumhur of the Fuqaha, the 4 schools of law, they have said that it's 3 talaqs in one go, is still 3 talaqs. But there is also the opinion of Ahlul Zahir, the Zahiriyya, and Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayhima, that it is, if it's 3 talaqs in one go, it's only occurring once. And even though this is the weaker opinion, it may sometimes be practiced because of necessity. or because of the mufti, the fatwa council allowing it. So it have to be individual independent cases, not just generally. Generally, the Jumhur are the stronger opinion on this topic. And that's it. We'll stop up to here inshallah. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum.